How's it going, guys? This is Benjamin Mena coming at you with the next episode of the Elite Recruiter podcast. I have with me my awesome guest, Joel Lalgee, who is the North American sales lead for Huxo Media. And first of all, before I say anything else, if you are not following Joel on LinkedIn, go follow him right now. He is the king of content. He is the king of engagement. In the recruiting industry, he's the best that I have seen when it comes to engagement, copywriting, and all that stuff. So go follow him right now. All right, now let's get back to the podcast. Welcome, Joel.
Great to be here. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good.
I will say the number one guy though for recruitment posts. I can't get ahead of Carpiak because Carpiak's been throwing out. I saw one of his videos recently had 4 million views. Now, granted, it was like the weekend on the Super Bowl running around, and he was comparing that to people waiting back for like job feedback. But he's pretty legendary, I have to say. So, do you follow
And
him?
I do not. And I'm going to right after we get done.
Yeah, definitely do that.
And I think I've seen that like somebody comment on my feed, so I've seen him pop up, but I'm not directly following him.
Yeah.
And so, real quick, you're like, I know we spoke a little bit before the podcast. You got a background in recruiting, and then you
Yeah.
moved over into like on the marketing side. Can you talk about going from recruiting to marketing and why the change and how do you
Yeah.
all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so I was in the recruitment agency world. I worked for a startup that was based in Milwaukee, and they actually had kind of a unique billing model, so a unique approach to recruitment. And essentially, what they would do is they would kind of like a retained search, but it was
Okay.
done hourly. So the idea was instead of paying for people to pay for, instead of paying a fee and kind of working contingent and obviously you risk putting a lot of time into it, and we all know the risks of that. Instead, what they'd say is like, hey, we'll work 10 hours a week on the search that you have, and then you can just pay us for the time. So if it takes us 50 hours to fill the position, you pay us for 50 hours. If it takes 100 hours, you pay us for 100 hours. So it was a unique company, but because of that billing model, they grew. When I started with them, they had 6 people. When I left, they had 90 people.
Oh wow.
So, I mean, rapid growth, so it was, the guy who's the CEO was like an ex friend of mine, or not ex friend. He was an ex like mentor, and we're still really good friends. But he worked at Randstad for years, and he's like super charismatic. Like was one of their biggest guys there in terms of like sales in the Milwaukee area. And I think he just felt like, man, there's got to be a different way to do it. So I worked there, and that was really it's actually really cool because I got to know hiring managers on a different level than I think. At least once I transitioned over to more contingent style, I recognize like with that type of billing model, you do get to know clients really, really, really well. And a lot of the hardships that you face in a contingent world where it's like getting people's time, people will give you time when they're paying you for the hour because the longer it takes you to fill a search, the more they pay. So they're really willing to help you out and move people through the process quickly. So it worked out well. And then I'd say probably the last year of my recruitment career, I was in the contingent world,
Okay.
and so that was, um, 30 to 50 calls a day, like phone time monitored, um, KPI, 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 and that was a whole different experience. But about 18 months before I left the recruitment world on the recruitment side, I started putting out content every day. And really, it came from a place of I was actually just kind of bored in the role that I was in. Um, I was like, and then I started seeing like the LinkedIn content. And honestly, I just looked at it and I was like, this isn't that good. And this person's getting like 400 likes. Like, and I'm reading through it, just going, this doesn't look that hard to do. And so I was like, I'm just gonna start doing it. And I found like it was a slow start, I mean, it started off pretty slow. But as I got better and better and better at it, I found out number one, I really love writing. just writing posts. I just really enjoyed it. And number two, I started to see an increase in my profile views. I started to see more engagement. And then about 9 months into creating content, um, at that time I was recruiting for like commercial drywall
Okay.
professionals. So it was like super niche, like
Yeah.
subcontractors, and they would get paying positions. I mean, some of these positions were 100 to 150K, so it was good fees, very niche. And so I remember I had my headline on LinkedIn was like number one drywall recruiter, but I was still putting out the same type of content, like just and connecting with more people. And I'll never forget the day because I got a message from president of a drywall company, and she was just like, "Hey, can you send me your contract? I want to work with you." And at that moment, I showed my manager at the time, or like a team lead, because there really wasn't like a management setup. But I showed her, and she's like, "I've never seen anything like that happen before." And I was like, "Huh,
Ding ding
okay."
ding ding ding.
That's what it was like. And obviously we all get candidates reach out to us, but to
Mhm.
have somebody reach out and just say, "Hey, I want to do a client, I want to be a client of yours, send me your contract." It was amazing. And then to follow that up, I said, "Yeah, let's get a meeting set." And we had an hour-long meeting, and at the end of the call, she was just like, "This is the best call I've ever had with a recruiter." And I was like, "Well, why is that?" And I was like, "I think it's just there's something different when you're not having to fight somebody to like believe that you can recruit for them. When they just come to you, it's completely different." And I think all of the experienced recruiters out there, that's what a referral is, right? Like that's how the business runs. Um, but this wasn't a referral from like someone I'd worked with in the past. This was like a brand new person I hadn't known. And now that's what I realized, like, okay, content does work. But again, it was 9 months of consistently posting on LinkedIn every day, weekend included. So
Before I ask about like the
yeah,
type
yeah,
of stuff that you're posting, like I know in the marketing world, organic has become hot,
yeah,
and I mean you kind of figured out and ran into organic on your own.
yeah.
Uh, Rolling into that, like what are some of the things that you were posting about then versus, and then going into some of the things that you're posting about now?
Great question. Yeah, I think when I first started, like number one, I didn't know what content was, never heard of the word. I didn't really know what copy was, and I wasn't on any of the social media sites. So it's not like I'm some like Facebook guy. Like I'd actually sworn off social media. And so the only thing I was on was LinkedIn because of work, right? Because I was on
Hmm.
LinkedIn Recruiter. Um, so I have zero background in this. So I literally started off with my first video was it was a 4-minute ramble on how I got my first job using LinkedIn. And it's actually a really cool story, but it was 4 minutes long, zero subtitles, and it was done on like a Zoom call like this. So it was crap. Looking back, it was really bad, but I didn't know any better. And then like the second post I posted was like a picture of my daughter who was like 3 months at the time. And she had a sign saying, I wrote a little thing saying like, um, what was it? It was like, my two priorities are eating and pooping. And it was like something really stupid. And people, I think, liked it out of sympathy. Then I remember like some of my other earlier posts were like, I did stupid stuff. Like one of them was I did like emoji math where I thought, oh, this could be really creative. And so I did like a strong arm plus time equals money. And like I did this, and looking back at it, I would never ever post that now. Um, but I appreciate that time because number one, I was just doing it because I enjoyed it and I wasn't looking to build a personal brand. Like even that word didn't mean anything to me. Um, Now, and then when you start to look at the evolution, I mean, now I would say with my content, like I talk a lot about creating content on LinkedIn. So it's got a little bit meta in that form. So I talk about creating content on LinkedIn. I talk a lot about like recruiters specifically, like being trained in a different way. So for example, like training recruiters on how to write effectively, how to write persuasively, how to do um, different content ideas for recruiters as well. And really, the pain that I see in the industry is as a full desk recruiter, it's everything's outbound and we're great at it. We're the best salespeople. We're great at it. But the reality is it's a really hard industry to come into. And that's because it now requires a lot. Now, starting out, like if you've been in the industry for 20 years, I get it. You make 20 calls a day and you make millions of dollars. Awesome. You pick up the phone and CEOs answer. Awesome. That's not happening if you've got 6 months experience in the recruitment world. You're having to make 200, 300 calls to really get traction and be successful. And the job order you get sucks at the end of it. So and the training, because I sat through the training, is like, when it comes to LinkedIn, it's like share the company stuff, share job descriptions. And what I sincerely believe is, if you teach recruiters how to get really good at writing, how to get really good with social media, how to learn how to story tell, that if they do that and they do the cold calling, that in a 2 to 3 year span, probably even less than that, um, they can pretty quickly become really well known in an industry. The problem is and this is from conversations with hundreds of agency owners in the last month. I just asked the question, what's your training around LinkedIn? Like, well, actually, the first question is, I say, how much time do you think your recruiters spend on LinkedIn scrolling? And usually they'll say like probably 2 to 3 hours. I go, okay, well, how are you teaching them to like maximize that time? Or what's your strategy for LinkedIn content? And most of the time, there's zero answer outside of, well, we teach people how to do Boolean searches. We teach them how to use LinkedIn Recruiter. When it comes to the content, there's zero strategy. And that to me is where the biggest learning curve is in our industry. It's like bridging that gap and going, okay, we need to come up with an effective half an hour to 45-minute strategy every day that's simple and easy to execute on, that over time, just like investing money, over time it compounds into something great and something that works for itself and produces inbound leads.
I mean, I I'm starting to see like what you're talking about coming into our industry, but I mean, how many of us, like, including myself, got trained like, hey, reach out to 75 people a day. That's
Numbers.
their goal. And of course,
Yeah.
like, the game has changed now. How many people actually pick up their cell phones? How many people actually pick up their work lines? So, creating a strategy to make yourself the well-known person in the industry, like, is a necessity now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I think, to me, that's what it's about. It's like you can play the numbers game and the numbers game will work. It just takes more numbers now. And I think the issue is, like, when I look at agencies, the conversations that I have with agency owners, real owners, they say we've kind of got like a generational gap where we've got people who are been doing something for 20, 25, 30 years. They've put their whole family through college. They've made millions of dollars. Great. Right. Then you have like this 0 to 5 kind of experience level. And you know what? They're burned out. And the problem is what happens is they burn out, then they go into like an in-house recruitment role, and then they won't take any phone calls from external recruiters because they had a terrible experience. And I'm not saying that's 100% true, but it can happen a lot. And obviously, um, I think the other thing that's starting to emerge is like the full desk role. It's almost becoming, I don't want to say it's like becoming extinct because that's not right, but I think people are seeing that like there's different skill sets within that. And it's like it's sales mixed with consulting mixed with um, even something like just being really persistent. But when you start talking about like advanced sourcing and like Boolean, like sourcing becomes kind of a skill of its own. Cold calling and business development is a skill of its own. And it's like the full desk. It's like I think it's harder and harder to find people like that. So I think there's different people that can fulfill different roles in the recruitment world as well. So, and then to your point, yeah, I think marketing is emerging uh, more and more. And I just did a poll on LinkedIn the other day, and yeah, I get it. It's a LinkedIn poll, whatever. It's not like this huge data set, but you know what? 6,000 people responded, and the question was simple: Do you answer a phone number? Do you answer unknown numbers from your cell phone? And it was like out of 6,000 people, it's like 70% said no. And the 30% that said yes, I went through. It was all salespeople.
I was about to say, I was like, I just saw a poll last week. And I think it was like 93 or 94% of people don't pick up their phone for an unknown number anymore. So I was like, it's got to be salespeople in there.
It was. And then when you go to the comments, I got 400 comments, and it was like, I totally answered. And it was actually all recruiters and salespeople. And I'm like, dude, come on. With the amount of warranty calls you get, with that, it's
Social Security.
exactly. There's so many scams. And I think, it's hey, I'm not just saying, I think it's the same concept with like a marketing newsletter, right? Like marketing newsletters were super relevant like 4 or 5 years ago when they were first on the market. But when every single company has a marketing newsletter, the effectiveness of it just shuts down. And so with a lot of these concepts, it's like, to me the writing is huge, because I think writing is a skill that we just don't teach enough within the industry. And that could be like creative email subject lines or creative emails. Like that's a skill set which I don't think we teach enough. And it's just as important as like your phone manner or phone calls or interviewing. But to me, it's like we need to be up on different trends. So if we were talking before this call about Clubhouse. Like Clubhouse is a relevant thing to know right now. Like if you're in tech and you're in tech recruiting, you should be on Clubhouse, because there's a lot of tech people on there. And it's like, learn that, like understand it, learn how you can use it, learn how you can spend 30 minutes, go into some rooms on topics that you care about, find the people on LinkedIn, connect with them, and have a basis point. So um,
I want to chime in quick. I'm on Clubhouse every now and then. I've pulled candidates that I've submitted to my clients from Clubhouse.
exactly. Look, to me, the game now is the game is the same as it's always been. It's how do you just what's the quickest and most efficient way to connect with people? That's why cold calling works. Like that's why people like it, because in theory, you could make 10 calls and you could get 10 connects with great people, and you hit it off with them, and they're great candidates, or they're candidates in the future. In theory, the problem is like, is that truly the most efficient way to reach people? And I think a lot of times, like I posted about today, it's like this battle. When I start talking about inbound marketing, it's like they think it's like this fight between cold calling and inbound marketing. It's like, no, it's being well rounded, and it's understanding fundamentally the psychology of the people you're trying to reach. And to be honest with you, like anybody that tells me like cold calling is the most effective way, I'm like, no, I think warm calling is more effective. And I think cold calling is an activity which you have to do. But what's the goal? The goal of the cold call is you got to build trust. I think there's better ways to build trust over time. Um, I think the cold calling is always going to be the quickest way. But I think long term, like when I say Greg Savage, and you know who that is,
Yep.
and the 50 recruiters who might be listening to this going, this guy's an idiot. I don't know who you are. So that should show you the power of like a blog, because Greg said in 2012, when he started his agency, or 2009, whenever that was, he said, what's the best way for me to market this? I'll just start writing and doing a blog. Now that thing gets 1 million hits a month, and he gets business off that he turns down because he's got so much coming in. And I think that's how you have to think. And it takes time, but you have to be investing in that. And to me, like in 5 to 10 years, if you don't have a social presence, it's not just recruiting. If you're a financial advisor and you don't have something on social, or you don't have like an internet presence, you're done, man, because someone else is going to do that. If you're in real estate, same thing. If you're in banking, you got to have a digital real estate, or something that somebody can look up, just like you look up what's the best neighborhood to live in, or what kind of shoes should I buy? Like that's what people do. So
So
if you think that doesn't happen, I don't know.
let me pause that real quick.
Yeah.
So people that don't have a strong social presence and strong digital real estate, what are the quick 1, 2, 3 things they could do to start really getting that going?
100%. Great question. Uh, Number one, I think you start off with engaging with other people on social media. So quickest way to increase your profile views, comment on 100 posts. Quickest way. Because if you post, I hear people, oh, I'll start posting every day. Not probably the quickest way. You want to start doing that so you can build up traction. But the quickest way is to scroll down your newsfeed, comment on 20 posts, do that every day, and you got 100 comments out there. And the reason this works is I'll flip it back. If you post and somebody you don't know comments on it, what's the first thing you do?
You go look at their profile. At
Exactly.
least I do.
So that's the quickest way to build awareness. It's the most underutilized skill on LinkedIn. Is so many people are focused on what do I put out? What do I put out? Nah, just find what your prospects are putting out and support that and do that daily. Your profile views will, if you're getting 50 profile views in 90 days or 100, you just do that for 1 week, you'll probably double your profile views. The next part of that is to start, as you're doing that, looking at the content that's out there, seeing what works well. So if you see a piece of content that's got 400 likes, take a look at it, read it, look at how it's formatted, see what the topic is, and start thinking, why did this do well? Read through some of the comments and start understanding why it did well. And the more that you consume, the more you're going to just see what does well and what doesn't. And then you can start to implement that. So find the people, find Adam Karpiak, find myself, find you, find Adam Posner, find people in recruiting who are doing decent or well with content and start to emulate them and find your own way of doing it. So those would be my 2 tips. I think
Okay.
if you're looking at starting content, don't commit to every day. That's like me saying I'm going to commit to the gym every day. You're going to get a month in, you're going to burn out, then you're going to take a week off, and then you're going to feel like a failure. Instead, start once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, and it's like a lifestyle change. It's like it really is. It's like you have to just be like, okay, I'm going to commit to this, because again, too many people start off and they invest really heavily with time, and the ROI takes months, if not years, which is really hard to hear. But knowing that, you want to stay consistent. So the best way to do that, start slow, start steady.
I I mean, seeing you on there, I've been kind of upping my game on LinkedIn and a few other things, and surprisingly, I know that you've talked about having like just inbound leads coming. I've actually started having inbound leads coming from stuff I've been posting.
Dude, I
So
love it. Well, because fundamentally, like, look, if, and I say this a lot, like, if you're a recruiter and you've been doing it for more than 5 years, there's 3 types of people who are going to be out there that know you. There's people you've placed, people you've worked with or are working with, and then there's prospects that you've probably reached out to a ton. Like, we all have those people, and the
yeah,
longer you've been in the game, the more of those people there are. So if you start, like, you got 2 options. You can either you can collect your email list or run through your ATS and go, hey, what are your forecasts for 2021? Want to do this? And like everyone else is doing, or you can put out a video about whatever, who cares, something that think about sales calls. Like, you don't just lead in with like value. It's always like, hey man, how's it going over there? Great. Oh, where are you out of again? Oh, I'm out of Milwaukee. Cool, I got family in Milwaukee. Like, that's what conversations sound like. So that's what content should sound like. And literally,
oh,
they look at you and go, hey man, I actually like that guy. I wonder if he, doesn't he recruit? That's how it works. I mean, it's like we overcomplicate it, and I get it. I get the pressure from it. But the other thing to consider is, like, don't think so much of like each individual post. Like, think collectively, like monthly and yearly, like how many views am I getting? So if you put out a post and you get 1,000 views, that's not a lot, right? Actually, yeah, it is a lot, because that's 1,000 people that saw your name. But let's say 1,000 views and you're like, man, that sucks. Dude, if you did that every day, you would have 360,000 views. Then all you got to do is go on Facebook and go on their ad page and figure out how much money you'd have to spend for 360,000 views. Automatic ROI. And then
oh yeah,
and you got to think, like, that's why I just encourage people, like, think long term and like don't get so caught up in like the individual things. And then if you look at like the first month, maybe each post gets 500 views, and then the next month it's 1,000 views, the next month it's 3,000, and it grows steadily. That's awesome. It's like, don't compare yourself to me. Like, you want to know the reason why I get so many views? It's because if I'm on a sales call with somebody and they like are like, well, I post on LinkedIn too. I go, let's just share the screen. And then I just run them through my posts and they're like, oh my God, you got like 250,000 views. And I can see it. It helps me, right?
Mm-hmm.
The goal for most people in recruitment at a desk level is you want 5, 10 solid clients that can generate you anywhere from 50 to 150,000 a year. If you had 5 clients that paid you $100,000 a year, you're doing pretty great.
Yep.
So then why do you need 1 million views? You don't. You need probably like 1,000 views a day of the right people, and you need a small percentage of them to just be like, wonder what Benjamin's up to. Maybe I'll email him, or, oh, he's a really good recruiter. I like him. Let's do business with him. That's the name of the game, and when you break it down like that, then I think people like, okay, I get it. And it takes the pressure off. Like, you don't need to be a LinkedIn influencer. You need to be a recruiter that fills roles, and you just need to get in front of more people in an easier way. Simple as pie.
Awesome. So, want to roll into your company. Like, what exactly do you guys do?
Great question. So let's see. 6 months ago, I started up my own recruitment marketing company, and it turned into a ghostwriting company. So I was writing 150 pieces of LinkedIn content, and it sucked. Okay, and it still does kind of suck, and I still do that. And the clients I have are super cool, but it's a challenge because it's like I can't just, like, writing stuff is hard. Okay, ghostwriting is even harder. So the way that I ended up being was like I got 8 clients right away, and I still work with them, and they're all different levels, but I didn't want to scale it. Like, I didn't want to just hire copywriters in Thailand to have them write it. Like, that's not my style. Like, I care about people's story. So I ended up hooking up with this company called Hoxo Media that are based in the UK. And the way that happened was just like this. The owner was like, hey, dude, you want to be on a podcast? Like, you're killing it on LinkedIn. I was like, sure. We had a conversation. I said, what's the goal for the company? He said, dude, we'd love to be in the US, but it's so hard for us to find someone that isn't just a salesperson, but that's like a brand. I was like, dude, I'm a brand. Like, I'd love to help you guys out. And so we're a full scale digital marketing agency. That's who we are at the core of what we do.
Okay.
But when the pandemic started, Sean realized, like, I've got to give back to my clients more because everybody's hurting and everybody's afraid. And so he set up an academy, or like just a mastermind group, where he just ran through the agencies he was working with, just ran through that whole team, like a basic LinkedIn training program. And at that time, I mean, I think he was, there was a price tag attached to it, but it wasn't that much, and it really helped them. But then as he started running through it, he was like, man, this is really helping, like, them at an individual level, at like a desk level. And it's creating community, and it's really helping them. And so he came up with the idea of like, okay, I need to actually put something together and teach them. And just to give you a little bit background on Sean, like, his podcast in the UK gets 20,000 downloads. He's like really well known in the UK. He's got a recruitment background and kind of a similar story to me. So he's got good LinkedIn presence as well. And so he was like, okay, let me formalize this. Let me put together a program. Fast forward to 2021, we have a conversation. He's like, dude, we would love to roll out the academy in the US. And so it started off for the last couple of months. I've just been selling that program, like 8-week course, ongoing community. And over the last couple of months, we just decided, you know what, we've got to, like, we don't want to just be a course, right? Like, everybody's got a course. It's not hard to teach a course and put a course together. What's hard is like being there for somebody like 6 months after they've done the course, and like making sure they're continuing, and like encouraging them and inspiring them. Because you can buy a LinkedIn course for $119, but
Yeah.
it won't do anything unless you do something with it. And it's just like the gym. I know what to do. it's just like doing it. And we decided like the best way to do that is to teach the foundational course and then put people into a LinkedIn community, so a LinkedIn group where we're putting out daily content on there that's
Okay.
exclusive, and then running like ongoing courses. So now my job is like I teach the academy, so I teach the whole program, and then I run twice a month sessions on like deeper topics. So like this month I'm doing how you could use Clubhouse potentially, and we talk about like how SEO works on Clubhouse, how your profile should look, what types of rooms, how to set up a moderation squad, how to do a back channel, like getting creative with things. Then I talk about TikTok, like how could you use TikTok in recruiting.
Now I know why all the recruiters are in Clubhouse. It's because of you.
Probably that's I would say like I would say there's a couple of people. I mean, the guy that I think he's killing it on there right now has got like 30,000 followers, and he's just like setting up um, rooms, but he's not even a recruiter. He's starting a staffing agency based on the fact of how well he's doing.
Yep.
And I think you've been in some of those rooms too, so you know who I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's what we do. So we have the 8-week course. You pay a monthly fee, and basically you get into that course. Everybody in your agency can go through the course, and if you hire someone new, they can go through the course. And then the idea is like we want to build like the biggest recruitment marketing community that's full of recruiters where we're sharing stuff. And like, I'm not talking about a pod here where we're just like liking each other's posts to like it. I'm talking about like a mastermind of like how we can spur on the modern day recruiter and just encourage each other to success. And then I'll be deep. I'm jumping in there with like, I know a lot of stuff about the algorithm, and I posted 1,000 times last year. So I'm bringing that value in there as well. And bottom line, man, we ran through like what our vision is. Our vision is like we just want to usher in like the true modern day recruiter, and we want to equip the people that we're working with at the agency level on how they can multiply their business at an individual recruiter level. So
Talk
what we
about an
do.
absolute game changer. I know we're running a little short on time.
Yeah.
Real quick, question I ask everybody: your favorite book what is your favorite book? And you can say either the book that has had the biggest impact on your career, or a book that you're reading now that you're getting a lot of value out of.
Dude, so for me, the big game changer is I read Think and Grow Rich in like a day, and that was 2 years ago. And that was a book. I went on like a reading spree where I read like Think and Grow Rich. I read like How to Win Friends and Influence People, like the 4 Hour Work Week. I just read all these books, but the biggest one that I go back to is Think and Grow Rich. And at that time in my life, like I was just like I said, really bored, and I didn't know what to do. And I remember sitting there just asking like, what should I do? What should I do? And I actually stopped reading. So I read every day for 6 months, and then I stopped because I was like, man, these books today just saying the same thing and I'm not doing anything. And then literally 3 months later, I started posting on LinkedIn, and it kind of came out of nowhere. But I realized that like what had
Cool
happened
thing.
was it's almost like I wanted it so bad, but I had to like take a step back. And then once I started on LinkedIn, I started to believe in myself. And I became better at recruiting. I became better at everything I did. And so, yeah, I love that book. And I think mindset and the way that we think and the way that we limit ourselves is like the difference between making it and not making it, and just being open and seeing like opportunity and conversation and collaboration and networking and all that type of stuff. So, yes, sir.
Cool. Joel, thank you so much for coming on.
An
You know,
honor.
I've chatted with you before. You wealth of knowledge and always a pleasure to chat with. So thank you for joining us on the podcast.
You know what? I can't wait to be a part of your club on Clubhouse. Appreciate it, man. It's awesome to be here, and I'm super glad that we're connected. And it's cool to see you executing and hearing those stories about inbound leads. That's what I love to hear. So it's awesome. I love
I'm
it.
gonna have some fun. All right. See you guys later. Up until the next episode.